Hello, Meredith. How are you today? Welcome to therapy. How are you feeling?
Hi, doctor. I'm feeling a little unsettled, if I'm being honest with you. Came to therapy because I'm having such a really big midlife crisis. I am a surgeon, a general surgeon, or at least I think I want to go into general surgery. I'm kind of conflicted between neurosurgery and general surgery. So I feel like a lot of factors have played into this hole in my heart being torn between neuro and general, and I'm here to just talk about my feelings and hopefully come to a conclusion in which path I want to take.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate your honesty. Before we jump in to talk too much about your sort of ideas with deciding between different types of surgeon or being a different types of surgeon, I think it's important that I talk a little bit about the process here, and then also we should go into a little bit about your background, just because it is the first time that we're meeting. I think it's important that I get some context as to sort of who you are, what
Yeah.
makes you tick, and those sorts of things. So, this is going to be our intake session. So it's a very introductory process. We're getting to know each other, and I think therapy is a mutual process where you should get to know a little bit about me as well. But I want you to sort of express who you are, try to give me the best sort of ideas as to what makes you you, and then sort of eventually, after we sort of gather all of that, I think it would be beneficial to then sort of have you talk about what your chief concerns into coming to therapy and all that stuff is. So I think where we should start is probably childhood. I think that makes the most sense. So talk to me a little bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up, your parents and your siblings, and things of that nature.
Yeah, so I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and I was an only child. My mom, she was an amazing journal surgeon. She wrote a bunch of books on surgery. She even won a Nobel Peace Prize on surgery.
Wow.
So she's someone that I look up to a lot. Unfortunately, she passed away just 2 years ago due to
Sorry to hear that.
Alzheimer's. No, thank you. And that's another thing that I feel like I have to just live up to her expectations, because I do carry the gray name. So I feel that I have to just make her happy now that she just passed away. I was an only child, but recently I found out that my father, Thelmar, he actually had an affair, and I have a half sister, Lizzie, and she's actually pretty awesome, and we've been hitting off ever since. It was a little rocky in the beginning because I felt like she was kind of dirty because it was my father's mistress who had her, but now we just learned to love each other. And my father, he's an alcoholic now, so we don't really talk to him anymore, and basically she's all I have now. Like, that's my family.
Interesting. Okay, so it sounds like your mother is sort of this hero in your life and somebody that you really looked up to, but then at the same time, her sort of status as a prominent surgeon kind of then forces you to experience the pressure of deciding sort of to become a surgeon, and you kind of feel slightly pressured to follow in her footsteps and sort
Yeah.
of carry on your family's last name. And then it sounds like you have a little bit of a more difficult relationship with your father, and
Yeah.
you sort of had this newfound family member with your half or stepsister now, or I guess half sister as well. And I'm glad that that's going to potentially be something that you can sort of get a sense of family with and
Yeah.
develop a relationship with.
So my relationship with my mother, I wouldn't say it was the healthiest,
Okay.
since my mother had Alzheimer's at a very early onset. It was hard because she would just sometimes not recognize me, and it would hurt because being her only daughter, you would think she would remember me, but she
Sure.
really didn't.
Sure.
And when I had like big accomplishments, like I graduated from Princeton with like the highest grade in my class, she didn't really recognize and acknowledge that I was the best. She kind of always said that I could do better. So in her eyes, I felt like I was never enough to her, and I feel that it has affected me and in my professional career, because every time I accomplish a milestone, I feel like it's not enough. So I'm really trying to make peace with myself and really think I am enough and believe that I am enough, because I think I am.
Sure. It seems to me like you've sort of internalized a lot of those feelings that your mother sort of passed on to you about not feeling like you're worthy, or sort
Yeah.
of not feeling like your accomplishments were to be valued or validated. And obviously, if that's your mother who's sort of passing those feelings on to you, that's a super, super important, informative person in your
Yeah.
life. So I'm sure that tended to have a big impact on you. You talked a little bit about your college experience, but I want to go back a little bit further. Tell me what you were like in middle school and high school, and
Yeah.
what sort of experience you had, how your friendships were, and your overall like mental and physical health.
Yeah, so overall, my health has been great. Like I mentioned, having a mom who has Alzheimer's, I kind of had to be the mom of the family, of both of us. So it was a lot of nights after college and after high school that I had to go home early because she was just off the rails and she didn't like to take her medication. So I was her main caregiver. Over time, as I got into the residency program here in Seattle, Washington, I ordered her a nurse so she can take care of her full time, and she ended up getting really violent with the nurse. So it affected my line of work, because I had to take off time from my residency to help my mother out, of course. And I'm not complaining, but having that job of like taking care of your mom when it's supposed to be the other way around
Sure.
has really affected me, and
Sure.
I feel like it's created a hole in my ability to love and accept people that are coming in. Like, I have this wonderful boyfriend now. His name is Derek, and he's part of the reason why I want to kind of get into neurosurgery. But I'm having such a hard time letting him in because I feel like I personally am not enough for him. Like, he's a world-renowned neurosurgeon, has published so many journals, and I feel like this all has to go back because of the connection that me and my mother had.
I see, or essentially the lack of
Connection.
that you guys were able to not necessarily foster. Okay, interesting. This might be a little bit of a difficult question, but does it? Or well, I guess the first question being, does the Alzheimer's, is that something that was common in your family or runs in your family? And then if so, is that something that is sort of in the back burner of your mind, that it may be something that you have to eventually deal with one day and kind of come to terms with?
Yeah, so eventually I will get tested for the Alzheimer's gene. I know that the medication right now, like the medicine to test for the Alzheimer's gene, isn't 100% and is not 100% viable. So I would like to wait like a couple more years and to see if it is, because eventually I do want to have kids and I want to know if I can pass that gene down to my kids. So it's definitely something I'm living with through the back of my head every day. But it's not really affecting my line of work. If anything, I feel like it's motivating me to maybe eventually find a cure for Alzheimer's.
Yeah, that's really powerful stuff. I'm glad that you're able to sort of harness that into some sort of like future aspiration that you have. I also think it's important, just from my own personal knowledge, have you ever come to any sort of therapy before? Have you ever had any sort of like therapeutic relationship like this, or is this a sort of a first time thing for you?
This is the first time, and this is the first time because our hospital has forced all employees to do some kind of therapy, and I feel like it will be good for me to just, I'm not really like an open person, I'm very closed off, and I feel like this is very important for me to talk about things.
Sure.
And I have a best friend who, I guess she's really tired of hearing all my things already. Her name is Christina Yang. She is a very well-known cardiac surgeon, and she's also my inspiration, but I feel like she gets really bored of me complaining to her and talking to her about my problems.
Sure, that's understandable. I mean, our friends can only do so much, and they have their own issues sometimes, so it's important not to completely burden them with all of your problems. And I mean, that's kind of what I'm here for, and I'm happy that you did decide to come to therapy. Your face kind of lit up when you talked about your friend Christina there. Like, talk to me a little bit more about her. How did you guys meet? What sort of relationship do you guys have? What kind of person is she like? What sorts of emotions come up when you think about her? It was just obvious from your body language you seem to really like her.
Yeah, Christina Yang, she came from MIT, and she knew she was a cardiac surgery from the day she was born, I like to say. She comes from a family who really supports her. She's half Korean, so her family is very pushy towards her becoming a doctor, so they were all for it. And she just gets me, you know. She's not like other girls or women I like to think. She's very upfront and she says things like it is, and I can always go to her with any personal issue or problem that I may have, because she will tell me like it is. Like, she won't cut corners, and if I'm being over dramatic, she will like slap me and tell me that I'm being over dramatic. And I feel like, given the circumstances that I've been through, like my mom just dying 2 years ago, that's really the type of person that I need, a person to just tell me how things are. And I really I appreciate her as a friend, and I appreciate her as a surgeon.
Sure. It almost kind of sounds like she's the textbook definition of what somebody would look for in a friend. It's like she checks all those boxes, and I'm glad that she's somebody that's been able to be in your corner, especially through some of the recent difficulties that you had. So transitioning a little bit, what sorts of things do you like to do when you're away from the hospital or in your free time? What sorts of hobbies do you have? Is your friend there? Does she accompany you to some of those hobbies? Do you have other groups of friends that you do things with? What sort of things what does your free time look like overall?
So I don't have a lot of free time right now. Like I just mentioned, I just accepted this residency program here at Seattle Grace Hospital here in Washington. But I don't care. I love it. I love the work that I do, and it kind of just helps me drown out the white noise in my head with my whole father being an alcoholic, my new sister being a part of this new family. So I feel like the more I keep busy, the more I can just not focus on those kind of things. I usually sleep at the hospital.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
My mom left me the house, and it's a huge house with 5 rooms, and I don't like to be alone, so I've rented it out to my fellow surgeons and my friends. So it's Alex, Lizzie Stevens, Jojo is there, and Christina Yang is living there as well. So we're like a huge family.
That's nice.
Oh, it's very nice. And I feel like they're a really big support system. Every time I come home late, there will be food in the counter. Me and Christina, whenever we do have the free time or we make the time, we like to get drunk on tequila and just dance. Dancing is a type of a way for us to just let loose and just forget about our days, because we do have some really hard days. We lose a lot of patients, and sometimes we save a lot of patients, but the medical world can be a little disheartening, but we just dance it out when we can.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. Tell me a little bit more about the other housemates that you described outside of Christina. What are they like? What are their backgrounds like? And how do you view your relationship with them?
Yeah, so my first friend here at Seattle Grace was Christina, and then it was Alex Karev, and he's just like a Christina but in male form. And he's always willing to lend out a helping hand, and he's very upfront and very stern and serious. And I think he has a thing for Lizzie Stevens, who is the other roommate. We like to call her the black sheep of the family, just because she's like not really sure what direction she wants to take her residency program in. And I feel like it's up to us as her friends to just lead her in the right direction. But overall, I feel that our relationship as a whole, we all like to just sit on the sofa, watch movies. I know that if I need to go somewhere short notice, I can count on them as being on call. But yeah, very, very good set of people that I have in my house right now.
Great, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you have that support system, because oftentimes if you have chaos on the home front, then that translates to chaos and it rolls over into other areas of your life. So I'm happy that you're sort of able to have that stability and someone to go home to, even if you're sleeping at the hospital, somebody to go home to, and the whole idea that, you know, you find that home in people and you get that feeling of, you know, feeling connected and stuff like that. So now I think we ought to sort of transition and talk a little bit about the guy that you said is potentially your boyfriend or you're dating. I guess first, let's talk a little bit about your relationship history. Did you have any dating history in high school or college? And I guess first go into the history, and then afterwards we can transition to talking about him.
Yeah, so I wasn't really much of a dater. I was kind of most of just like one night stands.
Okay.
I never really felt a connection with somebody, and
Is there any reason for that, you think? Or?
I feel like it was just I never was really like loved as a child, so it was really hard for me to just love someone and accept someone in me,
Sure.
into my heart. But that was just in high school and that back then. But I enjoyed my one night stands. You know, I enjoyed the no strings
your fun,
attached.
yeah.
You know, that's how I let myself loose. Until recently, when I met Derek. We met at a bar, and it was supposed to be a one night stand, but it turns out he was working in the hospital that I got hired in. So it was a little complicated.
Sure.
Because he was in the middle of a divorce, and
Oh.
his wife was also working in the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a lot for us to get over, but I feel that that only made us stronger, and we've been ever since together now, and we've been having some little problems here and there like any other couple, but other than that I think we've been pretty good.
Interesting. So what do you think sets Derek apart, or what do you think is different about him as to why you guys sort of transition from just being a casual hookup one night stand into this solid relationship? I mean, obviously if you're working in the same place, you have a greater chance to see each other, but is
Yeah.
there like specific things about him, or how does he make you feel, that have sort of been reasons to keep him around?
I feel that we both like to pick each other's brains,
Okay.
and I kind of fell in love with his knowledge more than just him physically.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I still love him physically,
Sure.
but just the knowledge he provided, and he was kind of like my therapist, I would like to say, just because like
You're gonna put me out of a job.
he was kind of just always, he was there with me when my mother died.
Okay.
So he kind of took on that role of just being a safe spot, and I wouldn't say he was grooming me, but he was just honestly there for me, and he was always looking out for me and always being on call if I needed him to be on call for my shift.
Okay.
And he introduced me to a lot of people, like Dr. Weber, who was chief of general surgery, who helped me create my thesis paper for
Oh, wow.
my hospital interview. And he's just opened so many doors for me, and I'm internally grateful for having such a bright man by my side.
Yeah, sounds like he came into your life at just the right time.
Definitely.
And everything has sort of worked out, and I hope that you've been able to provide just as much help for him as he had for you. I'm sure
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to ask him, what sorts of things he values in you. Before we wrap up here, you sort of started off the session talking about how you feel like you're in a little bit of a midlife crisis in terms of which sort of direction of surgeon
Yeah.
career pathway you want to go to. So I know we don't have too much time, but if you could give me a little bit of a brief synopsis about that, and then maybe that could be a great place to start for our next session moving forward
Yeah,
and setting
so
goals.
I would like I mentioned, my mom was a world-renowned general surgeon. So
A general surgeon,
Yeah.
just all types
of surgery.
Just want to make sure I understand.
And I personally feel like I have to just follow in her footsteps, because I do carry the gray name,
Okay.
and everyone around me, I feel that expects me to follow her name. Like, for example, Dr. Weber, he's chief of general surgery. He's always mentioning how great my mother was and how excited he is to see what I have in store in like the future of general surgery. So in that case, I feel like I have to do general surgery, and I'm really good at it. And in the other way, this Derek has opened up this whole world of neurosurgery, and I've never thought about doing neuro, but now that I've gotten my feet wet and immersed myself in this technology of neuro, I just fell completely in love with it. It drives me to be better. Like, I want to keep learning. I may not be the best, but I feel that with practice and with Derek by my side, we can become like a power couple and really achieve greatness.
Sure. Yeah, it kind of sounds like it's a little bit of a conflict between your head and your heart. It seems like your head is kind of telling you, well, mom was like this, and these other doctors at the hospital have specific expectations for me. But then on the other side of the coin, my heart is really drawn towards, neurosurgery and all of the stimulating, interesting things that Derek has told me.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's going to be a hard conflict to navigate. going against, you know, an internal conflict between
Mhm.
your head and your heart. But I'm happy to work through it with you. So as we wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much for coming into therapy today. I really appreciate your vulnerability, and I really appreciate the fact that you kind of gave me a lot of backstory and insight into who you are. And I look forward to continually working with you in the future, and I hope I'm able to help you achieve your goals and sort of have you work through your problems.
Thank you, doctor.
Of course, yeah, thank you.
Bye. It got dark
I know.
as it stopped.